In this lecture, we'll be designing the homepage for our membership website. The homepage is going to double up as a place where visitors can enter their email address. Our homepage is going to be a splash page. What I mean by that is that when people land on our website, the sole intention will be to get their email address or allow them to sign up. Often, I follow the principle of placing all the elements on the website, then styling. However, for this project, we'll be styling as we're going along. Rest assured, we're still going to be working with Webflow as a professional would do. We begin with our blank canvas, starting with the body. I want to start by styling some elements of the body. Reason being, this will save us time as we add elements onto the body. Those elements will adopt the styling that we set in the body. Though the body inherits a body selector, I want to start by giving the body that we have a class of body. Reason being, we may want to use these presets as we design other pages for our membership website. To begin styling, I want to edit the body's typography. I want to set the font to Montserrat, and I want to leave the weight as normal, but I do want to change the text size. I want to change that to 18px, and then from there, I want to set the height, and I'll use EM for that, and I want to set the height to 1.8. Now I want to expand the more type options. Once you've done that, you'll see the letter spacing choice. I want to add a letter spacing of 0.2. We'll see this take effect when we insert some text elements. That's all I want to change in my body, so let's move on. Now we're going to add a section onto our canvas. We can find the section in the Elements panel, and we can drag the section out into our canvas. Let's style this section now. All of our content is going to sit within this section, and within this section is going to sit a container, and all of our elements will be within that. We'll add the container after we've styled this section. As you'll see in the navigator, the section is nested in the body, as it should be. This is the appropriate structure one should follow. Let's start by giving this section a class of section. If we go to the Style Manager, you'll see that appear. With this class created, it will allow us to use it later and have all the styling presets we create applied. It follows the programming principle of dry. Do not repeat yourself. Let's go back to styling this section. To begin, I want to change the layout and I want to set it to flex. And within the flex layout, I want the direction to be horizontal. And I also want to align the items within this section to the center. This ensures the elements that we place inside the section sit correctly. Moving down, we have size, as you can see here. So as we can see, the section is pretty small at the moment. I want our section to take up the entire frame of the website because I want to place a visible border around it. Therefore, I'm going to set the height of this section. And I'm going to set it to VH, and I want it to be 100 VH. We'll add the border in just a moment. Moving down to typography, you'll see everything highlighted in orange. Reason being, it's adopted the styling from the parent element, the body. If we change any of these settings in the section, it won't change in the body. However, I don't want to change any settings. Going down to the borders section, I want to add a border. I want to create a solid border. I want to make sure the border covers all the areas, so I want this to sit in the center. I want to set the width to 24px. And I want to leave the color as black. You'll see that our membership website is slowly but surely coming to life. That's everything I want to do for the section. Let's move on. Now I want to add a container element within the section. We can find the container element within the Elements tab. Once you've found the container, just drag it into the canvas. And as mentioned, it's going to sit inside the section. All of our homepage's content, image, text, form, will sit inside of this container that we've just dragged out onto the canvas. This is a good, clean website structure that many professionals will follow. Let's style this container before adding any elements within it. So to begin, I want to give this container a class of content. It's best to use descriptive class names. That way, in the future, you'll know what they refer to. If we scroll to the top of this panel, I want to change the layout, and in display, I want to set the layout and the display of this container to flex. This time, I'll set the direction to vertical. I'll align the contents to the left, which will be at the start, and I want to justify the content at the start as well. If you were coding what we just did in CSS, you'd write something like dot content, open up the curly braces, and within those you'd write align, colon, left, semicolon, and so on. As you've just seen, doing this visually is so much easier. Moving down, I want to edit the spacing, which we can find here. I want there to be sufficient spacing between the content we place in this container and the edge of it. I'm going to set the left and right padding to 16px. Don't be concerned if the container goes small. It'll open up once we add our elements within it. Under size, I want to set the max width of this container. I want to set it to 720px. Again, if we go down, you'll see that the container has inherited the typography settings we set in the body. This is why we set them. It saves us from having to repeat ourselves. That's the container done. Let's move on to the next element. I now want to add an image element into our container. This is going to sit above all of our other elements. We can find the image element in the Elements tab and under Media, and we want to place that onto our canvas within our container. Now, as you can see, I've placed it outside all of our other elements. Reason being, I want to show you something. So as you can see, our container, our content container, is very small, and trying to move the image within the content container on the canvas can be a little tricky. This is why I tend to use the navigator to move elements around. So if you struggle, we can move the image within the content container in the navigator much easier, as you can see. Before styling this image, let's upload it. So if we click on the image, then click the small gear icon, we can click Choose Image. This will take us to the Assets tab. From here, we can upload an image from our machine. I've got my image uploaded already, so I'm just going to click this and place this onto the canvas. As we can see, the image is far too big, so let's style it. Before anything else, I want to click on the image and I want to give it a class of image. Hence, any other image that we want to adopt this style with, we can give it this class to save us time. Before continuing down this right-hand side panel, let me set the width of this image. I want to set it to 80px. Let's now style the image in our CSS panel. The only thing I want to add here is some spacing to the bottom of the image. Reason being, I don't want the elements that we place below it to be too close. So let's set the margin bottom to 12px. Working in twos is something you'll become accustomed to. It's a designer's habit. With the image done, let's move on to the next element. Now, I want to place a main heading onto our website. I want it to sit below the image. Let's find the heading element in the Elements tab, and let's place that below our image. So we can just drag it out onto the canvas and place it below the image. I want the heading to be the largest, so H1, and I want the heading to read the following: another finance database, and we can delete the heading text. The heading is something tongue-in-cheek. Let's now style it. Now, before anything else, I want to give the heading a class, and I wanted to give it the class of header. Let's now start styling the heading. And the first thing that I want to do is edit the spacing. I want to remove the top margin, so I'm going to set that to 0, and I want to make the bottom margin 20. Moving down to typography, we can see that it has inherited the styling we set previously. But as this is a heading, I want to make it bigger. So let's edit the size and the height. I'm going to set the size to EM, and I want it to be 4. And I'm going to edit the height. So I'm going to set the height to EM again, and I want the height to be 1 EM. EM is another measurement value besides PX. EM is more often what you'll see professional designers use. Everything else looks good. So let's move on to our next element. The next element I want to add into our website is a paragraph of text. We can find the paragraph element in the Elements tab once again, and once you've found it, we can drag it out onto our canvas and place it below the heading, still within the container. Let me first delete this dummy text that we have from Webflow, and then I'm going to paste the text I want in, and then we'll commence with styling it. So let's get all this deleted. I'll paste in the text that I want, which is the following: Hola, I'm Gordon Gekko, an 80s villain, and so on. It's something tongue-in-cheek. This project, after all, isn't about stellar copywriting. More so, it's about how to build a membership site with no code. So now that we have this paragraph, I want to add 2 links within it. I want to link Gordon Gekko to a Wikipedia page of Gordon Gekko, and I want to make sure that that opens in a new tab. I don't want visitors leaving the site. I also want to link the word email, so let's link that. Again, I want it to open in a new tab. The idea with the email link is that it would open up a sample email that potential subscribers would receive. Let's now style this paragraph. So let's begin by giving it a class of text. So let's go to the CSS and give this paragraph a class of text. Then I want to go down to the spacing, and I want to give it a bottom margin of 16px. Everything else in this panel, otherwise referred to as CSS, looks good to me. However, I do want to edit the color of these links. I don't want them to be blue. Let me show you how to do that, as that setting isn't in this panel. To begin styling a link, make sure you've selected the link. Then go to the selector and click on it. Select all links under HTML tag. Here's where we can edit the style of the links. The only thing I want to do is edit the color, and I want it to be the hex code of 141414. That's better. Let's move on to the next element. The next element is going to be a form block. So let's find the form block in the Elements tab. If we scroll down, we can find it under Forms. And let's drag that out into the canvas and put it below our paragraph text. There's quite a bit of styling to do here, so let's start. To begin, I want to make sure that I've clicked on the form block, and I want to give it a class of form block. And the only thing I want to edit here is the spacing. I want to give it a bottom padding of 24px. If we now look in the navigator and expand the form block and expand the form, I want to delete both field labels, the first field label and the second field label, and I want to delete one text field, leaving one text field and one button. I don't want to edit any styling in the form. Now, I do want to add a div block. We can find it in the Elements tab under Basic. Now, I want to place it somewhere specific, but for the moment, let's just place it underneath the form. Now let's go back to the navigator. Now, I want this div block to sit in the form, which is within the form block. So let's move that in the navigator. And I want to make sure that nested within this div block is the text field and the submit button. So I want the text field to be nested within it and the submit button. There we go. And I want the text field to be above the button, naturally. You'll see why I've done this as we begin to build out our membership website. Now, once you've done this, click on the div block and give it a class. I want to give it a class of form div. Let's now style the div block. I want the display to be set to flex. I want the form to sit on one line, and I'll make sure it's aligned at the start. So we want to make sure that the direction is set to horizontal. And as mentioned, I want to make sure that it's aligned to the start. Let's move on. Onto the text field. So let's go to the text field and let's begin by giving this a class of form text field. Perfect. To start, I want to give it a padding of 12px all around. So let's give that a padding of 12 all around. There we go. So we have the top, right, bottom and left set to 12px. Under size, which we can find below the spacing, what I want to do here is set the height to 56px. Typography, if we go further down, I want the size to be set to 16px. Moving down to the borders, let's set one. I want an all-round border. I want it to be solid. I want it to have a width of 2px, and let's leave it as black. Before moving on to the button, let's add a placeholder text in the text field. So if we click on this little gear icon, we can enter a placeholder text. I'll write Gordon at wallstreet.com. Wonderful. And what you'll also want to do is make sure that the text type is set to email and that it is required. Otherwise, people will be able to submit spam via this form. Now let's move on to styling the button. To begin, I want to give it a class. And I want to give it a class of form submit button. And the first thing I want to do, scrolling back up, is I want to edit the spacing. And I want to give it a top and bottom padding of 12px. And I want to give it a left and right padding of 32px. And you'll see those changes take place on the canvas. Under size, I'll set the height to 56px. And under typography, I'll set the size for that to 16px. Moving down, I want to change the background color. Let's change that to black. Also, let's add a border. I want an all-round border again. I want it to be solid, width of 2px, and again, black. Let's change the button text as well. So we'll want to click on the little gear icon again. And for the button text, let's change that to subscribe. This looks much better already, but we still have work to do. In the navigator, you'll see success message and error message. These relate to the form. When a submission is made, they will show if it's been successful or if something went wrong. So let's style these. So you'll want to click on the form block, and then you want to click the little gear icon. And let's begin by styling the success message. So you'll want to click success. The success message should now appear. So let's begin styling this. The first thing I want to do is make sure that I've clicked success message in the navigator. Then I want to go over to the right hand side panel and give it a class of success message. First thing I want to do is scroll right to the top, and I want to edit the left and the right padding. I want to leave the top and the bottom set to 20px, but the left and the right, I want those to be 0. So let's do that. The only other thing I want to do is make the background transparent, and we can find that here. So we just need to write transparent, and that will change. Moving on to the error message, again, let's click the gear icon and let's click error. Then to start styling this, make sure that you've selected error message in the navigator, and now we can go to the right hand side panel and begin styling it. The first thing I want to do is give it a class of error message. Once we've done that, I want to scroll right to the top, and in spacing, I want to edit this. What I want to do is remove all of the padding and only leave a top margin of 10px. Going down to typography, I want to change the font size to 14. I want to change the color to red. And then going down to the background, I again want to make that transparent. That's now done. If we click the gear icon and click normal, that resets our form. Now let's add a small piece of text above the form. I want to use the text block element, which we can find in the Elements tab. So let's find the text block and let's place that onto our canvas. Again, I want to use the navigator to place this in the correct place. So this text block must sit between the form and the form div. And as you can see, it's so much easier using the navigator to place elements again. I want this text block to read email address, and we can delete the rest of the dummy text that has been created for the text block. Let's now style this text block. Here is where I'm going to introduce you to combo classes. So the first class I want this text block to adopt is text. Now, you'll see the styling we created for this class and it gets applied. However, I want to make this text smaller without changing the elements with the text class. Therefore, I'll need to give this a combo class of small. Now we can style this element without affecting any other text elements. So I'm going to change the bottom margin to 5px. I'll change the text size to EM, and I want it to be 0.8. Everything else we can leave. Now, let's add the final element onto the website. Let's add another text block so we can find it in the elements. So let's find the text block, and this text block, that's going to sit at the bottom of the website, so outside of the form, but still in the container. I want this text block to read the following. So let's first delete this dummy text, and I want it to read, become a member or log into your account. Let's now style this. I'm going to make sure it adopts both the text class and the small class. See how quick styling becomes when you make use of classes correctly? Let's now set some dead links for become a member and log into your account. We'll set the correct links later when we've created those pages. But that's everything for our home page design, designed as a splash page. If we look in the navigator, you'll see all the elements which are nested. If we look in the style manager, you'll see all the elements and all the classes that we've created. And if you click on the code, you can see a snippet of the code that we've created once it's loaded. If you're on a free plan, you'll only be able to see a limited preview. But that's everything for this lecture on our landing page design. Join me in the next lecture where we'll design our members only page, which will involve creating a new page.